Hey, what is going on, you guys? My name is Rayge, and we are back today with an update in regards to my Apocalypse timeline that I've previously worked on. Now that the Famine Scourge for the third time has been wrapped up now, we can start taking a step back here in terms of, how the next 3 to 4 months are going to look. So just as a recap, guys, as well, in the epic campaigns where we are working towards the Apocalypse Saga, if you recall, all 4 of these sagas need to be available beforehand, in addition to Apocalypse Saga, in order to unlock Apocalypse. That said, the timeline I've kind of put together based on the previous activity is shown here, and you can see here, guys, just as a recap, we started things off in April early this year. There was a couple months gap which led to Famine, Rogue, Scourge, and then it was another month before we saw Pestilence coming back from Morgan Le Fay for the second time. Another month later, we get the introduction for the third time of Morgan Le Fay, as well as finally the War Scourge. In the second half of the year, starting October, you can see very clearly, especially the last couple of months here, including October, November, the activities ramped up quite a bit. For instance, October and November has shown us more activity in those 2 months than pretty much the first four months of the year, which actually included the first 3 scourges. So it seems to be ramping up, and I was actually pretty surprised in November when Morgan Le Fay's Scourge came for the 4th time, before the War Scourge even came a 2nd time. So funny enough, that never came to fruition here, because originally I put it for November, but now that we're wrapping up the end of the month, we may have to push this timeline out a little bit. However, what I have bolded in November is that the Famine Rogue Scourge did in fact come back for the 3rd time, so that was actually accurate. The first time being July, but then second time was October, and it finally did come back in November as well. So that was very promising to see, just to get that reoccurrence. That it seems like the trend so far right now is that most of these scourges are running for 4 times before Apocalypse is ultimately going to be released here, which we're speculating to be March 2023, also the anniversary of Marvel Strike Force. So that's kind of where the logic comes in from. Obviously, this timeline can always be pushed depending on the updates and so forth, but you can see, based on the information that we have available, then with the exception of the War Scourge not occurring for the 2nd time yet, we can assume it may potentially get pushed out. It seems like we're on track. We're on track here right now to have the Death Scourge. It's sometime in December, assuming everything goes right. But what is going to be interesting that is in December, there is quite a bit of holidays. Like, I don't even consider there to be, a full month of gaming, but likely the developers are going to take time off as well, knowing their trends of how, even something like Thanksgiving, they're able to take a couple weeks off, right? So I mean, that's going to be very interesting to see if that actually does come to fruition in December, because you would assume that with an event that scale, there's got to be a management of the leaderboards. You got to go through and make sure that everyone's competing fairly, and as well, it's the final Scourge, it's the final Legendary Horseman release of Archangel, so it's gonna be interesting. I still think it's gonna be December, but it may be closer to the end of the month, maybe earlier January, assuming this timeline stays consistent. But otherwise, the only thing that's kind of off track right now is the War Scourge, because we should have seen it run a 2nd time, but that hasn't been done yet. So I'm assuming it's going to be likely in December, which means the War Scourge may just happen again in January, and as well as in February, which is different from the timeline I have here, but basically every month starting next month. So that's a very big possibility, just because we see this occurrence here of things kind of ramping up, with more scourges kind of getting included, right? Especially with November, where we saw Famine come back right after, pretty much within a week after the Pestilence Scourge was run with Morgan Le Fay for the 4th time. That leaves us then with January and February, where we will likely see the reoccurrence of the Death Scourges. Whether or not the Death Scourge happens 4 times, that remains to be the question, because assuming the timeline of Apocalypse does come in March, April sometime, they may have to squeeze in the 4th Death Scourge, but to be honest, at that point, we should be pretty darn close. Something that's not discussed, however, through this timeline is the speculation of what other characters we need to actually ultimately unlock, right? So if you guys recall, Spider Weaver, upon her release in the very beginning, they made it very clear that she was going to be necessary and required for the unlock of the Apocalypse Saga. So she's a direct character that's needed to go through the nodes, actually following the 4 sagas, and then ultimately allowing Spider Weaver to actually partake in that. Now, what's not clear is what other characters are involved. You know, it could be potentially a character we already have in our roster, but then I'm curious why they haven't announced that yet, right? Or it could be part of another character or a couple characters or team combinations of a new team. And that way it does kind of force us to invest in characters that are brand spanking new to the game, right? So definitely very important to be mindful of that, because we have to save our materials and resources, because, you know, especially what's telling with the sagas, right? We know that only as of right now 2 of them have come to fruition. We still need to see the War Scourge and, the War Saga, as well as the Dev Saga, and they usually follow the Scourge runnings at least a second time when it gets rerun again. So if War Scourge gets run again for the second time this coming month in December, we'd expect the Saga to shortly follow. Same with Dev Scourge. If that comes out in December, we would expect the Saga to likely follow in January. So it does give us time of about a month, maybe a month and a half to 2 months, for that opportunity where there could be a patch of new characters that may be required for Apocalypse. Or it could even be the speculation of some minions with what's required right now in the Death Scourge upcoming. But who knows, guys? That's what I have right now for the timeline update. But it seems like everything's on track with the exception of the War Scourge. So just wanted to give you guys a quick update there, because always interesting to see how the next 3-4 months are going to look from the timeline here, right? But for sure, we're speculating that at least in the next month, we should see the War Scourge again, as well the running of Archangel for the first time to the Death Scourge. So do let me know what you guys think in the comments below. It's been accurate so far. Just been expedited more with all these Scourges getting squeezed in. I originally thought maybe they would only run the Scourges 2 times or 3 times, but it seems like 4 times is going to be the common theme here, with the exception of potentially the Death Scourge, where it might be a little squeeze for time depending on when Apocalypse is actually ultimately unleashed. So there you guys have it. Thank you as always. Do appreciate checking my videos. I love these speculation videos. Do let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the next one.